Hi there and welcome again to the Campfire Project. And today I have with me Michael Lauria from Melbourne. Please say hello, Michael.
Hi everyone, thanks Alan for having me on again. I love these campfire chats.
Mate, you've been on a few times, so it's been really great having you. And then we have Nathan Siegel from over there in Mexico. How are you, Nathan?
Doing just fine, thank you.
Now, the great thing is that we were having a chat here earlier on. We were waiting for our fourth party to come online, but due to technical problems, they don't seem to be here at the moment. So we've just been chatting for some time, and instead of getting onto a subject, we were thinking about talking about the things that were impacting on our lives recently and how we're handling those. And while we were talking, up came the subject of fasting. And we found that quite an interesting subject to actually talk about today. So if everybody's ready, we'll have a chat about that side of things. And as Nathan, as you said, you'd recently been looking at fasting yourself, and this is what you've been able to get out of that.
Yeah, well, it was a total surprise. Like I said, when we were talking earlier, it was a sleepless night. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking about different things to do with healing because I haven't been as healthy as I would like to be. And one of the things that popped, well, it literally was a flash in my mind, and it was fasting. And I remember thinking, fasting. And I started looking into it the next day and started finding some really interesting things about it that I really didn't know. So that's where it began.
Fasting has definitely been, it's definitely been a thing just in society and also in religion. We don't want to talk, I don't think we want to talk too much about religion, but there's lots of stuff in religion. Even when I grew up as in the Catholic religion, and at some point during the year, there's something called Lent, where you give up.
Yes.
Yeah, where you give up. You only eat fish on Fridays, and every Friday you only eat fish. You can't have red meat at all. And so, anyway, that's just a very, very small. My first introduction, I think, as a child to some kind of fasting. And then on top of that as well, I've had a couple of experiences over the last 4 or 5 years in relation to fasting. Something that you were talking about earlier, Nathan, is a method that you've just come across recently.
Yeah, it was called the 5-2 method of fasting. And basically, for 5 days out of the week, you eat normally. You don't think about whatever. And then on the 2 days that you fast, like say a Monday and a Thursday, the way that you might do it is just skip breakfast, delay eating as long as you can, then have lunch and dinner, but maybe only 300 to 400 calories per meal. And that's the day, those 2 days of the. It's not a full fast, but it's one option. And there are other fasts I read about too, like water fasts and so on.
Yeah. I was walking down to the local shopping centre. It was actually last week, and I ran into one of my mates who was just sitting down there, and he just looked so much healthier. And I said, well, why are you looking so well? And he said, well, I've actually started a new fasting. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, well, it's a system called autophagy. And it's where, you fast for so many days and the cells actually eat the dead cells, get rid of the garbage out of your body and regenerate new cells. And I found out that it was actually the Nobel Prize winner from 2016. That's how he got his award, through bringing this autophagy program together and doing all the research on that. So I've just started looking into that. So don't ask me too many questions about it because I don't know that much about it yet. But the fact that eating the old cells and recreating new ones is what it's all about. And if my mate Mark has any example of it, it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah, well, there is another aspect to what you're talking about, that bit with the cells. I mean, part of what I was reading is that if you did a 24-hour fast, it would be enough to reactivate the stem cells in your body, which aid in all this rebuilding. And I've been following this stuff to do with stem cells for a number of years and wondering about it. I just didn't have the money to afford to do it, but I knew about a doctor in Ensenada, northern Mexico, who was doing these stem cell treatments. But when I found out about fasting and that fasting could actually reactivate that, it's like, ooh, boy, I need to find out about this. And I've been doing research over the last number of days just to find out what system would be really good for me to reactivate that stem cell process.
Yeah, because as I thought about, well, if you eat, you continually eat, you eat a lot of food. Yes, you put on weight, you're more lethargic and everything else. So regulating your eating's got to improve things. But I'd never really thought about, well, taking it to that other extreme of going into fasting, because, you know, I've known when I've tried it in the past, I've had headaches, I've had hunger pains and everything else. But apparently it depends on the amount of carbohydrates you're already taking. If you've got a large quantity of those, it takes longer for the body to react. Whereas if you're on like low carbs, it could be only 12 hours before the autophagy actually comes into play. A lot of carbs, it could be 72 hours.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about this autophagy thing that you're talking about. I mean, if you could send me a link, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'll even put the link in the notes when this goes up and is put out next week, so that everybody can have a look at that as well. Because I keep thinking that, you know, we're talking about looking after our minds and everything else. Well, looking after our bodies is extremely important because they're connected. If we've got the right thoughts in our minds, our body's going to be healthy. If we're looking after our body, then we've got more energy, we've got more attention to what we're doing, we're more focused. So everything's connected. So we need to look at our diets and the way we eat at the same time that we're working on our personal improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the interesting things about fasting as well is that it definitely affects the mind in a positive way. Fast.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of mentioned before that I did a 7-day water fast at the beginning of the year. So from the 2nd until the 8th of January. So not all that long ago, I did 7 days of only water. That's all I had. And black coffee as well. So you're allowed to have a fast continues as long as you don't have more than about 30 to 50 calories per day, as long as you don't ingest more than 30 calories.
Wow.
I think a cup of black coffee, like the short black, is something like 5 calories, so it's nothing. And I was having 2 or 3 black coffees in the morning, and then the rest of the day and into the night for 7 days, I just drank water, and ridiculous amounts of water as well. And I experienced all the stuff that you talked about, Alan, and I actually kept a video log, and it's in my group actually, and I documented this whole process and this journey for 7 days of my water fast. And you get headaches the first couple of days. The first 3 days are just shocking. You get headaches and hunger pains, and you feel weak and lethargic. And then something happens on the 4th day, and your body and your mind just switch into this high gear, like a different gear. And it's almost like you switch into a greater sense of awareness, more clarity of thought. My wife said to me my teeth were whiter, the whites of my eyes were clearer, and I just felt better and so much more energy. I had so much more energy than what I'd ever had before. Like my whole life, this is crazy because you think about the fact that you're only ingesting water and black coffee first thing in the morning, and the impact that it had on my body was amazing. Because at the end of it, as I said, I kept a log of all this, and I've got my statistics here. So I actually lost 2.6% body fat and 7.6 kilos of body weight as well over a 7-day period. And what it also does is it actually resets and starts the healing process in your body, and it starts to heal cellular degradation in your body. And I think that healing process actually starts from the 4th or 5th day. And there are places where you can go overseas and you can do 28-day, 14, 28-day water fasts. And the health benefits are incredible. People have gone there with cancer and tumours, and they've come out and they've gone back to the doctor, and the doctor has done their scans and they've said, it's like you've had nothing. It's like there was no tumour there was no cancer at all because your body is totally clear. So the health benefits of doing these things are phenomenal, and there's some good science to back it up as well. But I do want to put a bit of a disclaimer in there. It's not for everybody because it's quite an intense process. It's quite a violent process to put your body through, because your body then has to draw on its natural resources for energy. You still have to do things. You still live life, and I still did my coaching business, and I still had to be a father and a husband and do all the stuff that we normally do. And what I found was that what happens on a biological level and a chemical level within your body is after the first 48 hours, your body then goes into fat burning mode. And this is why I lost so much body fat, because then your body has to go, because you're not giving your body any sustenance, it then has to tap into the natural fat reserves in your body and uses that for energy instead. And that puts your body into a state called ketosis.
Yep.
And then you're just burning fat. You're just burning fat then forever. So it's good for people who want to burn lots of fat quickly and easily without doing F45 or some kind of intense cardio workout every day. But definitely, if you've got any sort of issues or just in general, definitely check with your doctor before you go doing things like this, because it then took me about 3 or 4 days for my body to then sort of recover from that, because you're really depriving your body of nutrients and sustenance.
So before you started, did you have any idea of how many carbs or what level of carbs you were taking before you started your fasting?
I did, Alan. It was way too many carbs, because we've just come out of Christmas and New Year and all of that. Way too many carbs and way too much, high fat, high carb food. And so that's not healthy for anybody. And so, definitely, I was very aware of the fact that I had put on a few kilos. And when you ingest those types of high fat, high carb foods, you get a bit of a kick briefly, but then the come down after that is, everybody experiences this usually at about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. You kind of feel a little bit more lethargic. You might feel tired and run down. And the first thing we go for are carbs or sugar. And generally anything with sugar in it has a high saturated fat content as well. And then if you don't work off these carbs and fat, it just turns into body fat in our body. And so, yes, I was very aware of the fact that I had been eating quite unhealthily for a number of weeks prior to that.
And that's probably one of the scary things when you start one of these things, is just realising how badly you had been eating beforehand when you start checking it out. But it stacks up with what I'd read in that just recently about the autopathy program, is that it depends on how many carbs you're having. You've got a high level of carbs. It can take up to 72 hours what's that, about 3 days to get a beginning of a result. Whereas if you're already a low carb diet, you can get it as quickly as 12 hours, so in the same day. So it depends on where you're starting from as to what sort of reactions you're going to have to it.
There's
what level of headaches and things like that.
Yeah, of course. And there's also less violent ways of doing this as well. If you want to start off slow, there's something called intermittent fasting, where you essentially just stop eating at 8 p.m. at night. And generally, the majority of the population will go to bed anywhere between kind of 9 or 11:30 p.m. in the evening. So if you stop eating at 8 p.m. and then you can manage to skip breakfast as well and go through sort of 12 p.m., essentially you're fasting for what is 16 to 18 hours. And that's also very good for the body. It is actually very good. And then you make sure that you do this properly. So you've got to eat properly when you break your fast. You then don't go straight for chips and chocolate and McDonald's. You do this properly. There's lots of research online. There's lots of good science. It's all online. And there's lots of people out there to teach you about intermittent fasting if you want to do something without going into anything too extreme.
Well, that's it. If you haven't really got the willpower for that, and you've got a lot of pressure in your life, a lot of activity, and the intermittent fasting, I think you mentioned that earlier, Nathan, was having that meal and pushing your breakfast back further and further each day. And so you're actually extending the period of time before you eat.
Yeah, that was for the 5-2 fast. Ironically, Michael, what you were talking about is when I made the decision to do a fast, it was like literally the night before, like 3 a.m, I thought, I got to start doing this. And ironically, the first thing I did the next morning is I had a cup of black, well, not black, I had cream. Sorry, I cheated. But that was the only thing I had. And I did, and it was just tea and water until 6 o'clock that evening. Then I did it again the next day. Same thing again with the coffee in the morning and no food during the day. But I thought, I need to research this a bit more and see if I can find a plan, because I was thinking, well, maybe what I'm looking at is some sort of life plan. I was thinking, that maybe it's time to start instituting something like this on a weekly basis. And the 5-2 plan is one of those options. Another version is what they call the 4-3 plan. Similar idea.
And apparently the longer you fast for, the more the body, and what it also does is it helps to rejuvenate your immune system. So what happens
Yes.
after a period of time, it starts, the fasting puts your cells into healing mode, and then your body actually starts producing more white blood cells, which obviously strengthens your immune system. So I think it's absolutely amazing what the body is capable of is astounding. And if we actually step back, like stand back and allow the body to do what it does best, and that is to actually self-heal and look after us as a person, really, as a human being. If we allow the body to do that and we stop putting so much shit into it every day, then we would actually feel and look and think at a much healthier level than what most people do. And we're getting in the way of all that with all the stuff that we eat, the excess carbohydrates, excess saturated fat, artificial colours and flavours and preservatives and genetically modified stuff, and all the hormones that are in chicken, all the colouring that is in red meat just to make it look good in the shops, in the shopping centre, in the supermarket, I should say. All this stuff affects us on a cellular level, and it impacts on our DNA, and it affects how we think and how we feel, because our consciousness is in every cell of our body, right? And so when we start to think about that, we start to really understand that what we ingest essentially becomes who we are as a person. So if we're a lot more conscious about what we ingest, we can actually change who we are as a person and the quality of how we show up in the world.
Yeah, one of the things I've always found it hard before was, 48-hour famines and things like that, where you get involved in fasting for 48 hours. Always found the discipline a bit tough, but one of the things I've realised lately, I get a cold, it seems to hang on for ages. I know my immune system's down. They give you antibiotics to kill the bugs, but that kills everything. And then your immune system's got to come back again. So giving the body that chance to recover is a great idea, a great thing to do. Knowing that after that period of time, when you start fasting, the cells start to eat the old cells and create new cells. So obviously that's going to work on things like your immune system. Now, as you mentioned about cancers and things like that, the bad cells start to get eaten by the cells that are regenerating. And this is one way to become healthier again. But probably a good idea would be to have, if you're out there on your own and you've got a lot of pressures around you, yes, you can come up and say, right, I'm going to do this. It's a great idea. I can see all the reasons for it. But then life gets in the way again and you break your cycle, or you don't get started. You're sitting there going, yep, I'll start that fasting and that tomorrow as you're eating a chocolate biscuit. So getting started. So having a buddy or somebody else that you can talk to while you're doing that, somebody else is doing it as well, might be a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic to be able to do something. If you can partner up with somebody to do it together, that will obviously help with making sure that you maintain that for a reasonable amount of time, because you've got an accountability partner. But one of the big things with when you do something like this, which is so out of the ordinary in our modern society, is that if you have a strong enough, as they call why, or a purpose behind why you're actually doing this, it helps to reinforce this. And then every time you have that old paradigm that comes in and says, I'm hungry, I need to eat, this is not good for my body, there's the new belief that comes in over the top and says, well, hang on, I'm reprogramming you because the way that I've been eating and the way that I've been living my life doesn't serve. So that helps you to maintain that process for as long as you're committed to doing so. Because it's really those old beliefs that sort of creep in. So you've got to have a very, very strong purpose. It has to be greater than losing weight. It's got to be greater than whatever it is that it is physically. We've got to have some purpose that's some meaning behind what we're doing that is much deeper than a physical benefits of a water fast.
That's it, because that'll move away from motivation, like I want to lose weight. Well, that's only moving away from, it's not taking you to something. So as you say, that image has got to be the dream that you want to create. It's got to have a target added to it, but it's a case of it's something you want to move towards. You've got to be able to remind yourself of that all the time as well. So sticking notes around the house, all those sort of things are probably a good idea as well, as to why you're doing this in the first place.
Whatever works, because willpower only lasts for so long.
Yeah. There was something else I was thinking about. It just, well, it'll come back.
It'll certainly come back. But, it's making sure that you've got the right people around you while you're doing this. Have that why as to why you're doing it. Do your research beforehand, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. Is a friend sent me through a number of links, and I'm starting to go through all of those to understand how well this works, and in understanding how it improves the body's health, how it improves the immune system. Because one of the things I say, I've had so many talks here in the panels, and I've started choking because of the phlegm in the back of the throat, because of this bug that I've got that I haven't been able to get rid of.
Yeah, and I have an idea for you about that, and it is diet related. Like, one of my major problems over the years has been acid reflux, and I received a newsletter from a Dr. Kim one day, and he said, "Oh, 2 things you can do to improve your health immediately: stop drinking milk and stop eating wheat." And I did that immediately, and within almost not even a month, my reflux had dropped so much it was almost like I didn't have it, and I could stop taking the medicine. But the other thing that a doctor that I was seeing at the time told me, 5 pounds of body fat will make an enormous difference. And if you lose that, it will directly affect this mucus thing, this going up the nose problem, all of that. And I've found out for myself that's true. It is kind of weird for me, but I'm not able to gain much weight, because if I do, I start getting sick. And it's real obvious. Can't miss it.
Now, I've got one of those systems. It doesn't matter what I eat. I was 60 kilos when I was 18. My heaviest I've ever been was 65, and that was when I was lifting a lot of weights, bodybuilding, and I generally run at about 63. So I've never been, since I was 18, never below 60 and never above 65. And again, it doesn't matter what I eat. So I must have a fast metabolism, but it's the style of foods and things that I'm eating I probably need to have another good look at. But at the same time, if the fasting has all those benefits, then it's something that I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't investigate it and at least give it a try.
Well, there is another factor with the reflux too, is to stop eating at least 3 hours before you go to bed. So if you go to bed at 10, to stop eating at 7. The other thing to look at potentially is to get yourself a wedge pillow. So a wedge pillow is, literally a wedge. Which boosts your pillow up, because one of the problems that you can have during the night, or at least I have many times, is that what happens is that there's I forget what they call it, some sort of a valve at the top of your stomach, and if that thing doesn't close properly, then digestive fluid can leak out, and if it does and you're lying down, it can travel up into the esophagus and you start coughing in the morning and stuff like that. And the wedge pillow alleviates that, but other ways of dealing with it are just diet. I mean, it's so simple once you know it. It's like, I was astonished. Like, lately I have been eating a lot more milk products, but not as well, and some wheat, but then again, I don't eat as much as I did. And my weight is lowered now. And so I still get reflux, but not very often and not that bad most of the time. And I don't take medicine, largely. I don't need it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The body is an amazing machine. If we allow it to do what it does best, it will keep us very, very healthy.
Yes, but we're so good at interfering.
We are.
Are we ever?
That's because the food smells so good. You walk into a restaurant and you walk past an Italian restaurant, and the pasta it just smells great, and the pizza's even better.
Oh, that's why you go sit in the bush on your own and keep away from all that shit.
I was just at a party for some friends who were going back to Canada, and they had this enormous spread, and the desserts that came in were so, like, oh my God, they were outstanding, but I couldn't eat more than a couple of bites. It's just like, no, it's wonderful, but sorry.
And this is one of the other things that happens when you fast, when you do something like what I've done or what you guys are thinking of doing. When you when you actually get to the end of that process and you're, okay, well, I've done my 7 days or 14 days or whatever it is that I've done it now, and you're a lot more conscious about what you put into your body. And I remember about a week after I finished my water fast, we went to somebody's place for dinner. We went to somebody's house for dinner for something. And the dinner was okay, but then the dessert, I thought, oh, I'll just do this to be social. I don't really want to eat this dessert, but I'll just do it to be social. It was a cake, some kind of cake. And I took one bite, one little spoonful of the cake. And I'll tell you what, the sugar rush that I got from that almost immediately was crazy, because it was something new for my body. And it couldn't process it the way that it did before my water fast, because I could have polished off that whole slice of cake before my water fast and not really felt anything. But afterwards, the body becomes quite susceptible to, unhealthy foods.
Did you notice the metallic taste of the sugar as well?
It tasted, look, it was just really rich and really, it was almost offensive, honestly. It was almost, it was almost offensive. I took a bite and it was repulsive. The amount of sugar that I could taste, and then I realized, I became aware of the fact that this didn't happen before. I could eat that kind of thing, daily if I wanted to, and it made no difference. But since I had avoided all of those kind of foods for a week, and put myself in a different mindset surrounding what I would chose to eat and what I wasn't going to eat moving forward, my body and my mind reacted in a way that repulsed that kind of food.
Yeah, and there's a reason why I asked you, because at one point I decided to stop eating sugar completely, and I was off it for a month. And at one point when I went to eat something that did have sugar in it, like you said, repulsive, but I noticed a heavy metallic taste to it, which is really disgusting, that I had never noticed before. But then when I started reflecting on it, I realized that every time I ate sugar, I noticed that kind of a thing to it, but I was ignoring it. It was like ignoring that discomfort that was there. I knew it was there, but I was ignoring it. But this time around, I couldn't ignore it. It's like, ugh, not so good.
Well, that's not a bad thing if your taste buds have actually changed and they're, you're noticing the foods that are not doing you any good. It's got to be a good thing.
One would hope so.
Yeah. And as you were saying, Michael, although it's the results that you actually feel after it, being more alive, being more alert, being able to think more effectively, all of those things are then going to flow onto the other parts of your life when you're dealing with other people. The stresses that we are feeling as men, we'll be raising our children with our spouse or being separated from everybody, and how we're dealing with life. It's got to put us in a better footing to be able to handle situations that are coming up.
And it certainly does, Alan. It certainly does. I still remember how I felt the last couple of days of that water fast, and then for 2 or 3 days afterwards, until my body started processing the food that I was starting to eat, how I felt, and I just showed up in the world at a much higher level. And I was a better father, a better husband, a better everything as a result of being very conscious of what I was putting into my body and allowing my body to do what it does best. Because that mind-body connection, as you indicated before, very, very strong. It's very, very strong. And whatever we put into our body affects our mind. And whatever we think about affects our body.
That's it. You can't separate the two. They're just permanently connected.
They are.
The physiology, neurology, emotional state, the whole lot.
Yeah, definitely. And this is part of what we talk about every time we sit around the campfire. And in this group, this is exactly what we talk about. Just how can we be better men for the people in our lives, and how can we lead our sons to become better quality men as they grow up as well. And this is all part of it. Healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit, showing up at a higher level. And so we can provide at a higher level for our family and be there and show up for them at a higher level. And so, what you said at the very beginning of this is so relevant. If we don't look after ourselves, And if we don't take responsibility for our own state on every level, how can we possibly hope to create better boys and who will grow up to be better men?
That's exactly right. Well, that's probably a great point to finish off the talk with. A good reminder to the men out there. Question for you. Well, Michael, you've done your fasting. Nathan, you're thinking like me about doing some more fasting. Me starting, you've already done some. But
Yeah.
how are we going to be held accountable? Maybe, I'm going to put it out to everybody that I'm going to finish reading the research by the end of this week, and then look at starting the fast and see how the autopathy program goes, and be able to give feedback on that as we go through. So usually you have an accountability partner. Well, how many people in the Campfire Project? You can all hold me accountable.
That's awesome. Yeah. Awesome, man. We will.
Well, it's kind of funny that we're talking about it because, like right now, I'm at my girlfriend's place, so it's challenging for me to try and do it here. But when I go back to my place south of here tomorrow, I'm planning to start doing it on my own, just to do it and see what happens. Because I want to see if I can improve my health. And this whole thing with the water fast, I was actually thinking of doing something like that. And my girlfriend's go, oh, don't be so extreme, slow down. It's like, but I need to do something, and it's really obvious to me. So,
well, if we look back at our past and that back into tribal times, 3 meals a day wasn't a regular thing. There were long periods of time, and that people, look at even England, people went without food for days on end. And
news to me, but I believe
the diseases we've got today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a major reason that we've got all these diseases today is because of the processed food and because of all the artificial ingredients. So years ago, I had a major fight with my mother when I went to visit her. And she had asked me to get these frozen, I forget what they call them, something rolls, these Chinese rolls. And I heated them up and then took one bite and went, yuck, this thing's full of chemicals. And my mother got really mad. And she said, you can't possibly know that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm going to prove it to you. And I went to the freezer and pulled this box out. I sat down at the table with her and I started reading out the ingredients. Going, artificial ingredient. There were 5 different forms of MSG in these bloody things, right? And she's going, how in the world do you know this? And I said, I read, Mom. I read. I pay attention to what's out there. And then I said, Mom, I want to take you on a tour. And we went on a tour of her kitchen and the foods in her cupboards. 80% of what she bought was crap. And it was mostly boxed foods and canned foods filled with all sorts of preservatives and different things. And she's just shocked. She's just going, but I was told this is good stuff. And I said, it's not. And you've been lied to like so many people. But I said, the bottom line, your problem is because you're not reading the labels. You need to read the labels. If you can't pronounce it, don't buy it.
I think we're very fortunate these days to have access to as much information as we do online.
Yeah, for sure.
And our parents, I know my parents didn't have access to that kind of information. So they had to believe whatever they read in the newspaper, whatever they saw on TV, and whatever other people told them, and whatever they grew up with. That's what
basically, yeah.
I remember my mother telling me, because this was just what she knew, she said, you should always, I come from an Italian background as well, mind you, so this will play a part. But, she used to say, a good plate of pasta will fix everything. And my grandmother used to say the same thing. Every time something was wrong, she'd make me a plate of pasta, and it would be full of carbs and oil and butter and fat. And I didn't know, and neither did they. But you look at that now and you go, actually, a bowl of pasta, a big bowl of pasta like what they used to give me, is actually not very good. It puts your body into this state where it then has to somehow process all of this and try to burn that amount of carbs. And it's actually not good for the body. But our parents didn't know that. Our grandparents didn't know that. We're just fortunate to have access to all this information online now, where they didn't. And they thought that doing all this stuff was good. It was healthy for you.
Yeah. The one thing I used to get and still do occasionally is, oh, you're not feeling well? Have some chicken soup. Now that one actually was good. They call it Jewish penicillin, where I come from at least. And I have found, yes, it is good and it is helpful and it's kind of a restorative, I guess. But that was one thing that was useful in my experience, at least.
Mm.
But yeah, once you talked about the pasta, it's like, sugar high and low,
Like
and
the
just
old
crashes.
the old belief that you broke the fast in the morning with a large breakfast, and as I said, you ate like breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper.
Yes, I remember that. Sure.
I've been questioning that one as well, because I have a large breakfast, to break the fast, and that I just find it really difficult to get through one. So I'm really starting to appreciate what they've been talking about with the fasting, and it got to that stage where it's something I really do need to give it a go and work it out for myself. All the research is out there, Michael, but at the end of the day, it's a case of test it for yourself and see how it goes.
That's right.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
If you don't feel that, excuse me, if you don't feel that healthy to start with, go and talk to your doctor first. But look at possibly reducing the carbs. Do it in that slow stage. Do short fasts and learn to extend that each time. So you might, as you can hear, my throat's already going. So that's a bit of the impact of, my body's telling me, Alan, you're on track. Here's a reminder to you. You want to get rid of this throat, do something about it.
Absolutely.
Here's some tea for you, sir.
There's also another aspect to this as well. We can actually we can make slight adjustments to what we're already doing to create an environment within our body that is a lot more sustainable and doesn't require so much energy to digest so much food so quickly. And so that is, it's about portion control, really. And rather than having 3 reasonably big-sized meals every day, if we don't want to do fasts and we think that's just too much, it's too intense for me, there's other things we can do. There's, when you're in bodybuilding and training and just losing body fat and all this sort of stuff, a nutritionist and a good personal trainer will tell you to have 5 very small meals spaced out, 2 or 3 hours spaced out, 5 very good, deep, like smallish portions. And then what happens is your body doesn't require as much energy to digest those smaller portions, and you're keeping your body sustained over a longer period of time as well.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't go into this shutdown because you've had this big bacon and eggs and toast breakfast. And then 2 hours later or an hour and a half later, your body's going, well, I need to stop. I've got to just lie down and stop because I've got to digest all this food. And then it digests the food, and then 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. comes, and it's time for lunch, and you have a big lunch, and then 3 o'clock comes and there's a crash, and the same thing happens for dinner. You start to space these things out and have smaller portions more often during the day, and then stop eating at 8 o'clock at night and don't start again until 11 or 12 the next morning. Find your physical well-being. You actually feel a lot better without having to go down the path of doing a 7-day water fast or anything extreme.
And what we're actually doing there is, as we're saying to everybody, test it, see what works for you and get your results from there. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about all the research that's out there. For me, it's what I actually feel. If I feel that whatever I'm doing is giving me more energy, if I feel like I've got more energy, then obviously it's going to be better for my body as well. If I'm thinking clearer, then that's also doing good for me. If you're not getting that, then go back to what you're doing. But as you said, it may take a few days to actually kick in. And from all the research that has been done, we know that the body has a reaction time, and after that, then it starts to settle down. So it could be a day, 2 days, 3 days before things settle down. So I'll give it a go, and I'll tell you how quickly I notice a change.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about your progress.
Yeah, me too.
You're right. It's all about testing and measuring. Some things will work for others. Some things work for me, for instance, that may not work for others, and same for you, Alan. And it's all the same. It's the same for us all. Different things work for different people. So you're right. It's about testing what works for you.
Because we're all uniquely different. As we've had all these panel discussions, the campfire chats and things, it's been a case of, for the men who are listening, to be able to connect with different men there. And some people are going to love everything that you do, Michael, and some are going to love everything that you do, Nathan, but then there'll be others that will go, oh, no, what you do is not for me. That's just the way we are. And that's good. So it's always testings for yourself, I never take it now as this being the gospel. Somebody says, well, that's it, fits everyone that way. No, it's a case of I won't really know whether it's good or bad until I test it myself. So someone goes to a movie and says, oh, that movie was crap. I go to the movie and I go, geez, I like that. Well, you don't know until you've tried it yourself, do you?
It's true.
I think it's pretty much the same with this as well.
Yeah, it always comes down to that. I mean, personal experience is the only way. I mean, I remember years ago when I was on the Baja, and 27 out of 30 people told me to avoid Cabo San Lucas, said it was a hole. And I finally went down there and experienced it for myself and discovered that I really liked it. But, you know, a lot of my friends were biased in the way that they really didn't like the modern Mexico, which was copying a lot of stuff of America, and they wanted the traditional Mexican, and, oh, if we lose that, it's terrible. But I like so many different things down here, and where I am in this Guadalajara area, there's so many modern things around here that, I mean, I feel like I'm in the southern states somewhere. And people go, oh, no, there's the Mexican. But if I cross the street on the other side of the highway here, I go to a place called Santa Anita, it's like everywhere Mexico in terms of the quaint, small towns with the cobblestone streets and all that stuff. You can have it. You can have it all, really. It's just a question of, well, how flexible are you, really?
That's it. I think that's a message for all of us on everything that we do. You know, you can listen to other people, but keep your own counsel, give it a try, and work it out for yourself, whether it be who do I actually work with in working on my issues, because everyone needs a coach. They need people that they can share things with, and down to my diet and everything else. It comes down to what works for me. And I won't know that until I actually get out there and trial it.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for being on today. As I said, we did have another discussion planned before we started, but with the three of us and getting into the conversation we had while we were waiting for our fourth person, it just seemed to be this was an appropriate thing to chat about. So I hope everybody who's been listening today has enjoyed it. And if you have any questions for either Michael or Nathan, shoot your messages through and connect online and offline with them as well. But again, Michael and Nathan, thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you, Alan.
Welcome. Good being here.
And for those that are listening to this as well, the challenge is there for you to have a listen to this, give it a try for yourself. Quite happy for you to send me messages on the post to ask me how I'm going with it. But just be aware that if you're asking me, I might ask you back to see how you're going as well. Anyway, thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you all later on. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.